Good morning. Yesterday in my reading plan, I came across a passage that really strikes a person as a little bit odd, especially 21st century Canadian people. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1, we read this: "A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of everyone, and the living will lay it to heart." What strange words to think that the day of death is better than the day of birth, and to go to the house of mourning better than to go to the house of feasting. And I want to say a couple things about this just in this little brief video. One is the writer of Ecclesiastes doesn't have the same perspective as the Christian, but this passage has a particular message for the Christian. We'll talk about that second. First, to be true to the text, the writer of Ecclesiastes is writing in wisdom literature, and I think that what he is saying is not that death is better than life per se, but that life becomes far richer when it is viewed from the perspective of mortality. A couple experiences I have with this. Certainly, very early in my life, in my later teenage years, I encountered death up close and personal through the death of a close friend, and it changed for me as a teenager the way that I saw life. Certainly, the frailty of it became evident to me, and I became much more intentional in how I was living. And in a similar sort of way, as a pastor, and a pastor in Charlottesville Township for over 17 years, I've done over 300 funerals. And many of those funerals for people younger than me or people the same age as me. And what I discover, and I think it comes from this reality, is having spent so much time around death and those who are dying, it actually gives a richness to life, an intentionality to life. And so when it says it is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of everyone, and the living will lay it to heart, is to say the person who simply lives in frivolity and laughter all the time has not taken account of what life really is and is not going to get as much out of it as the person who has had some experience with mourning and grief. It's not that that person is going to go around morose and sad all the time, but simply that they have a richer grasp of how tenuous and frail life is. But let me give one more interpretation of this. And from the Christian perspective, this particular part of the verse is absolutely true, and you need to give that consideration. The day of death is better than the day of birth. Uh, all of the good things I have experienced thus far in my life, in this world, have been based on the fact that I was born, that I live, that I have a body, that I am able to see and smell and feel and hear and taste. And there are many good things in this life, and things that I have enjoyed and things that I have delighted on. And this passage is not saying that those things are not good. In fact, the entire book of Ecclesiastes says it is good that we should enjoy the fruit of our toil, that we should eat and drink and enjoy these things in this world, but not that we should do them as if they were the only thing. For the Christian, the day of death is truly greater than the day of birth, because for the Christian, the day of death is the moment at which we are ushered into the presence of the Lord, and the things that await us there go beyond what the eye has seen or the ear has heard or the mind has conceived. Truly, the greatest moment for the Christian is the moment when they finally shuffle off this mortal coil and are in the presence of the Lord, when they are in that place where there is a never ending flood tide of glory. And so take that into account as much as you can. Let it help you to live and to live well in this world, not as a person who is morose and mourning, but as a person who enjoys this world, but also as a person who is looking forward with great appetite to the world to come.